API Conference, Elevating API Literacy.
How's the conference going? Thank you. Um, my name is Ijaola David. You can call me Ija, IJA. So I know this topic sounds like a lot. Pivoting internal APIs to B2B revenue generating products. It's basically the definition of it is that a lot of companies that in tech companies in this case, especially those that use modular architecture, have APIs that run services across different platforms, different devices. Basically, it powers the services that they give you today, and that powers their service delivery. My talk today will basically teach you or make you understand how you should probably offer that API to someone else and sell it to them for money. So it's saying we have APIs we built for ourselves. Let's sell it to someone else to use for their own services and make money off of it. Okay, this is not working. Okay, you guys can't hear me. Is it better now? Super. Okay, is it better now? How about now? Okay. So, the diagram here shows how APIs work. If you look at what's above, it basically shows you how APIs work at the top. Basically, you have something you want to offer for money, and it's powered by an API, and you use it to satisfy your customer. That API you use, or that API that basically runs everything you do, someone else can take advantage of it and use it to offer their own customers, which indirectly become your customers because you make money from them. A very good example, how many of us use Spotify? Spotify, YouTube Music. Yeah, that's the real OG, is YouTube Music. If you use Spotify, try YouTube Music, you stop. Spotify, yes, Spotify in 2014, between 2014 and 2018, they got 10 million users on their app. And it looked like the app was peaking. Like 10 million users at that time was a lot of users, but in the CEO's head, it's looking at 1 billion people, right? Because, the next big music streaming app, which they are today. And they had to think to themselves, how exactly do we go from just an app to powering music for everybody, everywhere in the world? Like, what's the plan to say you're on Facebook today, you're gaming, how can you access music? The answer was their APIs. They basically had an API that was powering services, sending data to different platforms, different devices, powering different services. And they thought to themselves, let's make this open and free so that music can be everywhere on the internet. And they partnered Facebook, and that was the beginning of their growth spot. That's how they got to their first 100 million subscribers, basically. And we all see it today, right? Everybody shares the Spotify link. You can preview some music. I even think now you can play music, but there'll be ads. It just goes to show you that depending on just what you've built, the internal APIs you've built for the core service might not be sufficient for you to achieve the numbers you're looking for. So this talk is how can we pivot those things we've built internally? How can we change the direction so that we sell those to other people and directly or indirectly gain more customers? So why pivot? Three things. APIs is solid tech business. Like there's tech business, there's apps, there's platforms, there's APIs, and a bunch of other edge cases, right? APIs will give you absurd revenue if you have PMF. That's if people really use your APIs. Something I realized about 2 years ago was I knew a friend working at a startup. They had about only 5 customers. They were doing more numbers than some popular fintechs in terms of revenue. Just 5 customers. Second thing is growth. Like the scale of work you have to deal with when you have a powerful customer or a company. Say, for example, one of you builds an API and Zenith Bank starts using it. We all know Zenith Bank it's one of the largest banks in Nigeria. You have a lot of work cut out for you because you're now dealing with millions of customers, potential customers. If only 10% of them should convert for a newbie, that's a lot of money. The next thing is growth. And why I made growth separate from revenue is that sometimes you don't want to charge for your API. You want to go the Spotify method. You just want people to see what your platform does. You want them to get access. So when they get access, you convert them to paying customers. APIs can do that for you as well. And lastly, retention. If you work in tech, you know it's incredibly hard to abandon an API partner or like an API you are using. A lot of teams do not want to do that kind of work of migrating to another API provider. You have to really mess up for people to say, we're leaving your API. It has solid retention. People stick a lot more than they would on any other platform, a lot more than apps. So APIs have these solid characteristics that if you currently have something solid you're building, you could probably pivot it and offer it to other customers, other companies to offer their customers. The next thing, if you're a Friends fan, this scene is probably familiar. Who watches Friends here? Love it. But you remember this scene? Yeah, so you can't force it. You see Ross is trying to force his friends to help him move a couch up his stairs instead of paying somebody to do it. That's the whole point here. That's why the guy's telling him to shut up. But the reason why I think I made this fit into the context here is that for you to pivot internal APIs, you need to be extremely careful because you need to have had a solid customer base. Like there needs to be proof that these APIs work and they work at scale. So you need to have had PMF. A lot of people throw PMF around. It just means that you have a lot of customers demanding. You have a lot of people that care if your product does not work. It's one thing for people to care if your product works. But what happens when there's a downtime on your favorite banking app? What happens when you can't use TikTok? You can't use Netflix? What happens when you can't use WhatsApp? I know WhatsApp is burdensome, but not being able to access WhatsApp is another thing. What happens when you can't use Slack? You'll probably be happy about Slack. But, but yeah, yesterday we had the CrowdForce issue. It just tells you that if you have solid PMF as a product, you should probably be looking at offering your product, your APIs to other companies. The second thing is people are asking you. Like your guy that works at X company is telling you, hey, Alpha, let's partner up, let's do something. They don't usually say it directly. If you're a product person, you know that they usually have this problem and the conversation just leads somewhere. You know that your business fits. It's just that today you don't do it. So some of these are signals that tell you, oh, look, somebody wants, if we build this thing, there's a likelihood that somebody will use it. The last thing is people are hacking your app. I'll give you an example. I work at Nobbies and something interesting happened. A brand designer, the most unlikely person you'd expect to build something, went to WhatsApp, built a bot around our system, basically to help people register their business through WhatsApp. What Nobbies does is that Nobbies helps you register and incorporate in multiple countries. And a brand designer, somebody that does videos, motion videos, graphics, thought about it that, look, why doesn't this just go to WhatsApp? And he started building with his friend. Slack. Did you know that a lot of the Slack integrations that we use today were just Slack employees playing around and saying, I wish I could see this here. I wish I could see that in my Slack home base. And that's their moat. Like, that's why Slack is immutable right now. They can't be moved. Because you know that you can manage your calendar there. You get notifications there. There's so much people do with Slack that I did not even know was possible. And it was simply employees saying, let's just tweak this thing so that we can do this thing. They were automating workflow, and they were basically hacking the app to achieve whatever it is they wanted. Some of you, your products already do this. People are finding ways to connect Zapier, WordPress, thinking about plugins. You should probably start thinking about an API. And sometimes it's not even your teammates. You will see somebody write an article randomly. They have thought about a use case you didn't even know your product could fulfill. I heard somebody try to build a banking app with Mono, with no-code tools, and I was like, what? How do you, because if you're working there, you're probably not thinking in that line, right? Somebody just brought an article and actually did it, like he did it, and he whipped it up. So that's example of people really hacking stuff. And you should probably pay attention, because those are signals that this is a good idea to go to chase, right? You need to build the API. Big caveat. I will not advise you to go and say you want to do research for a product that has 1,000 users to build an API. Get 1 million at least before you do this. The risk is lesser. And I'll tell you why now. So it's one thing to, come here and tell you to pivot. It's one thing to actually go and do the pivot. The problem with that is that, one, sometimes the market does not just agree with you. there's some things that just work. If you are in Nigeria and you've built products, raise your hand. If you built fintech around 2020, Emefiele's time, raise your hand. So you know what I'm talking about. That it's one thing to wake up in the morning and hope that the day will remain the same. It probably will not. Regulations change. Sometimes people are not just ready. They are interested, but their own team is not ready. And there's nothing you can't force somebody's roadmap. You can't tell me what to build. They will tell you the problem is important. Come and build. No. The market is simply not ready. Sometimes your team is not ready. Which is why I said if you have 1,000 customers, you can't tell your CEO, let's build API. You've not done 2,000, 3,000, 10,000. You're telling him API. It's not as if you're wrong. It's just that it doesn't make sense for the team to pursue that idea at that time, because his dream is, one day we wake up and say, let's do API. It's not just now. It's a problem, and it's not a noticeable problem, right? People will simply not be aligned with you. And if you even launch it, it will be hard for you to scale it. Because engineer is working on API. CEO will say, why is he working on API? He should work on referral products for the app, and they will take him off API. APIs take time to actually amount to something. To acquire your first customer might take over a year. But that first customer will do a lot of numbers. It's just going to be incredibly hard. So selling the API. So there's two ways to think about it. One way is you need the developer. The second way is the developer needs you. Developer needs you, they pay you, right? We all know that if you do something that you need a customer to pay, you probably need Paystack or Flutterwave. Those are functional APIs. If you need to send customer messages, you probably need SendGrid or Temi, functional APIs. You need it to power a functionality. For cases where you need to pay the developer, it's because they using your APIs directly brings you customers. For example, Spotify. Spotify cannot charge you for their APIs because why would you need music in the first place? It's just nice to have. I can play music on the app with my headphones and use your product, right? And open another tab and use your product. They would need to give you for free. Shopify, another example. They make sure that the people that build on them are actually paid. Why? Because they are customers. If you build on Shopify, you build things that subscribed customers will use, and it does more for Shopify than it does for you. Airlines. A lot of airlines have APIs that they just give out. I'm not talking about aero contractors or airpiece. I'm talking about, them guys out there, British Airways and the likes. They give out APIs so that people can go on your platform and basically click on stuff, and they'll be able to, book or just do anything that they want to do. So those APIs actually convert. So in those cases, you will need to pay a commission. You will need to pay an affiliate fee, a referral fee. So you need to think about it. What does my API do for me today? What does that translate to for a customer? Do I need them more, or do they need me more? So we'll just go through this. The next thing is, how do you actually launch it? So first off, validate. First issue is, and when I say validate, there's research. I know there's research, but please don't do this if you do not have strong signals. That's get the customer to say, I will pay you, or they actually pay you. And do it fast. Secondly, set up your docs. You already have the API. Do all the things. And you probably already have Swagger, right? Do all the things you need to do. Set up docs. Make sure it's readable. Hire a technical writer. 2 weeks, be done with that. Set up sandboxes if it's needed. Put in place a support structure. And make sure you're actually selling to the customer. If you're selling this kind of product, I don't expect you to be here unless you know for sure your customer is here. Unless you know somebody that will sign and say, hey, I'm going to pay you XX and we'll use it for a year. There should be a contract. There should be something that says, look, we're going to use you. If you don't have that, leave it alone. Anybody that doesn't tell you that is not a customer. Because you're chasing businesses, you're chasing companies. Be serious about it. Then the last thing is monitor and iterate, right? Track, improve. Also, if you know that the numbers are not making sense, abandon it. It's fine. It's product. It doesn't always work. If the numbers don't make sense, if you're investing more time in the API than the API is returning on those investments, abandon the API. Leave it alone. Use it internally. That's the mistake a lot of social media apps did early 2010s, 2011s. They were building APIs. People like MySpace, they were building APIs that were not just useful. Like, at this point, we don't need to know information or data about usage, right? So you need to think about that. Don't build stuff if it's not needed. Leave it alone. Time will come. So let's look at what has done it before, and we'll just round up. Uh, Netflix. So what did Netflix do before? Basically, you can use Netflix on your mobile, on your screen, even on Chrome extensions. Their whole point was, let's be able to offer an API to people so that it's spread across any device. And they did this before smart TVs became very smart, right? They did this 2011, 2012, 2000. I think they launched 2018 officially. And LG already used them. Samsung TVs already used them. PlayStation was using Netflix. And they've grown so much. Like, Netflix has had a lot of time to catch up, that they are the only ones not backed by a bigger company. If you look at all the streaming giants, the ones that are not are really small. It's because of this strategy of, let's be everywhere. Let's open up APIs so that people can access us anywhere and everywhere they want. The next one is MTI Mobile Money. Basically set up APIs to power USSD, different platforms. And they thought about it. We need use cases. Like, we need the numbers to make sense. They went to Uganda, started offering it to students, different innovators. And before you know it, insurance companies were using it, using mobile money to do insurance, using mobile money to do solar energy, pay as you go solar energy. So many use cases. And the results were phenomenal within 14 months. Then Nob is where I work. So we built our APIs to basically automate and validate data, move data. Because what we do is, you want to restart your business, it needs to go from point A to point B. How does it do that, right? The people in between, how do they get that data? And it makes our life so seamless. We found out that different people also needed it. Banks, fintechs needed the same process. If they did it themselves, it would be a lot of work. We already had the framework, and it was in our internal API, and we offered it to them. And basically, we do more numbers than our web platform at this point. Like, that one might probably just be there because of, we still have hope for it, but it does more. And it's one of those unique cases where we saw the signal early enough and we pursued it. So to conclude, if you have any questions for me, I don't think I have time for that, do I? Okay. So I want you to think about a company that you think, maybe reach out to them. They have solid internal products. They have a solid internal API. Maybe it's your company, and you think they will make money off of it. Remember, don't tell them until you think somebody has signaled for it or something has shown you a signal. And, just reach out to them. Be like, we should do this. We should launch an API. There's this customer. There's that customer. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope this was helpful.
API Conference, Elevating API Literacy.